Hey, Divine Ones. I wanted to come again and do another video to share another piece of wisdom from my healing journey. And so before we get started, I wanted to really say that I don't share my healing journey, my story of my healing journey for sympathy. I don't share it for people to feel bad about me or sorry for me or to offer me any type of advice. One, because my story ends very well. Like, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well, I'm whole. I am enjoying my life, and so from that aspect, I don't share it for that. I really share my journey. The reason why I'm share so much of my journey, and I'm so transparent with my journey, and honest about what happened with me and where I was and all of that, is in hopes that somebody watching, or for somebody watching these videos or reading my blog post, or on my Facebook page or anything like that. Hey, JR from Fiji. Thank you. Welcome from Fiji. Thank you for tuning in. I share, my journey in hopes that someone who is wanting to transform their life in some way, or wanting to heal their body in some way, can learn what that journey actually takes, what it actually looks like, can learn the principles for how to heal your body or how to positively transform your life. Because that was what my journey was about. It was a masterclass in that. It was a masterclass in healing. It was a masterclass in manifestation. It was a masterclass in transformation and the power of love and what the medicines of the soul really are and how you apply them to your lives to be really well. So, yeah, I wanted to start by saying that because I get a lot of messages and emails and comments from people really saying, how sorry they were that I went through that or anything like that. And while I really deeply appreciate the concern and I really deeply appreciate the care, I want you to know that my story has a happy ending. It has a really happy ending. And then also that I'm really doing this in hopes that I'm being so transparent, so see-through with my story that you can see yourself. So that's really, I just wanted to say that, like, that's why I share so much. But tonight I want to talk to you about an awareness I got about how I healed my body the first time. That I didn't understand, and that it took me years to understand, which is why it took me so long to heal the second time, because I really didn't understand this principle of why I was able to heal myself the first time. And before I do that, just for all of you all who are kind of new to me or you don't really know my story, I just want to briefly touch. I've gone in detail about my story in many different places. There are many different videos where I've done that. I've written about it before. So you can find a lot of that, on my Facebook page. You can find it on my YouTube channel. You can find it on my blog, on my website. So if you want to know a little bit about that, you can look up those places. I'm going to give you kind of a Cliff Note version tonight. So my journey really started on January 1st, New Year's Day of 2004, when I went to the hospital with what I thought was the flu and ended up being diagnosed with kidney failure, pancreatitis, anemia, 20 pounds of fluid overload on my body, a parasite in my stomach, pancreatitis, and if all of that wasn't delicious enough, AIDS. And the doctors told me that at that time, they thought that I probably had about 7 days to live, that all of the things in my body had progressed to a point where they weren't really going to be able to help me. They were going to try, but that they weren't going to be able to help me. And on my deathbed, I had a really, as they left me alone to kind of get my affairs in order, on my deathbed, I really had an awareness that I wasn't ready to die. Not that I was young. I was 24 at the time, but not that I was just young, but that I really hadn't really lived my life. I hadn't really lived my life well. I wasn't myself. I didn't really follow I wasn't following my dreams. I wasn't sharing my heart. I didn't really feel, wasn't being myself. I didn't really love myself, all of that. And so I didn't want to die like that. And so I made a decision that I was going to live. And so I began to throw everything that I knew at the time about how to create your reality and how to manifest what you really want and the law of attraction. I threw all of that at my situation. I'm going to share in this video a little bit about the stuff that I did. But all of that worked for me. Within 3 months, my body was completely healed. It was completely recovered. There was no HIV or AIDS in my system. My kidneys were back to fully functional, and all of the other illnesses had disappeared. And the doctors were calling me a miracle at the time. I was this miracle child. And they were saying, they didn't understand and that nobody had ever done this before. And, how absolutely just in awe they were about what had happened. And I thought at the time I had it all figured out. I thought, I at the time, what it felt like for me was that I knew that you could create anything in your life, that you were a spiritual being having a human experience. And what that meant was that you could create anything, even miracles, that it was all possible. And I thought I knew how to make the impossible possible. Until I found myself back in the same hospital a year and a half later with the exact same diseases and illnesses to the T, exact same readout, even to the T cell count, like the exact same thing. And at that time, on my deathbed, instead of 7 days to live, this time I had 48 hours. And on my deathbed this time, I had a near-death experience where I met the divine. I met the fullness of myself, my soul, and the divine, all that is. Some people call it God, creator, whatever. But I had a conversation with that, and I was told what the key to true healing and well-being was to come back home to myself. That was kind of the missing understanding that I didn't have, and that I didn't know anything about it, but I was going to learn. Now, that journey of understanding what that actually meant, I didn't fully understand what it meant in the near-death experience. I didn't get a full understanding of it. I just kind of had this conversation. It took me many years to understand what that was. And it took a lot of different awakenings and a lot of different mystical experiences and a lot of hardships and all of that and a lot of wake-up calls before I really got it and before I began to really start to have miraculous healing again. And transformation of my life again. But a large part of that was I really didn't understand why the things that I did in the beginning, the first time, weren't working for me the second time. And so I want to share with you a little bit about what I did the first time to kind of help, that healed my body, that I thought was the key to healing my body, but what the actual healing of what actually was the key to healing my body. So some of the things I did the first time was, again, I told you I threw everything, the whole kitchen sink at what I understood about the law of attraction at the time, at my situation. And so, I was meditating every morning. I was visualizing every day my kidneys being well. And again, I'm going to talk to you about what the keys were that actually worked and the stuff that I believed was working that it wasn't actually it. So, I visualized, and one of the parts of visualization is the social worker at my dialysis unit, because I was put on dialysis the first time and was taken off when my kidneys healed. But the social worker at the dialysis unit had this model. She had this makeup model of healthy kidneys, and I asked her for that, and I asked her, could I have it? Could I borrow it for a while? And so I was surprised. She actually said yes. She was really surprised because she was like, "Why do you want it?" And I told her, "I want to sit it on my counter that's right at the edge of my bed. So every day I wake up, I want to look at these kidneys and I want to imagine them being my kidneys. I want them to imagine this being a picture model of what my kidneys actually look like." So every day, so she gave it to me, and every day, literally in the morning, when I woke up, I would spend 5 minutes. As soon as I got up, I would sit up in the bed and I would look at that model of the kidneys, and I would imagine that that's what my kidneys looked like, that my kidneys were healthy and that they were whole and that they were fully functioning and that they looked like a healthy kidneys and that they were, really functioning kidneys. So I did this visualization practice every day. Another part that happened was my parents flew up, and I'm going to go a little bit in detail of each of these things in just a second, but I just want to list the different things that happened. So my parents flew up, and when my parents came up, they did a few things. Like they kind of helped me relax by taking care of everything. Like they helped me pay my bills. Although I had money for it, but they did like they kind of took over. Like they instead of me having to sit down and worry about where my money needs to go, they sat down. They got all of that together for me. We also did this thing every night, which I know was one of the keys. Was every night we would before I would go to bed, we would tell each other three things that and this is something we never used to do. This is something that I wanted to do because I believed it was going to help me heal. And it was an appreciation exercise because I had believed at the time, and I still understand now, that appreciation is one of the highest energies that we can feel. It's one of the highest vibrations that we can feel. And it's the key to manifest. Like getting in a constant state of appreciation is the key to manifesting, whatever you want. But it's also the key to healing whatever you want. If you can get yourself in a habitual or chronic state of appreciation. So what we would do every night before I went to bed was we would tell each other, we would go around in a circle and we would tell each other three things that we loved about the person, that we really appreciated about the person, right? That we loved, that we celebrated about the person, and then we would tell each other a really positive memory that we had about each other. And we would do three different, and they would be different. They had to be different things every night. So we couldn't repeat. So it had to be something different every night. So I would tell them each, three things that I really appreciated and I loved about them, and then a memory that I really cherished about them. And then they would tell me, each of them would tell me, and then they would tell each other. So, and then another thing I did was, I changed my diet. So I became vegan at the time, and I did a lot of affirmations, and I journaled a lot. And I did some energy healing. That was when I first became aware of what energy healing was. So I met with an energy healer, and I went to see her about once a week. So there was the basis of what was happening was I was doing affirmations. I was doing, the stuff with my parents. I had my parents and my family around, and we were doing appreciation. I was doing, meditating. I had changed my eating, and then there's another piece to this that I'm forgetting. So I did all of those things, and then I was journaling, and then also I wasn't like when I had come back home out of the hospital, and I was on dialysis at the time, but I was coming home from the hospital. I wasn't working. That was another thing. I had taken a leave from my job. And so all of this, and I want to talk to you about what I thought was the key to this. What I really thought the keys were to healing was that I was doing all of these things that I was like pushing. I was like doing all of this external work to make my healing happen. Like that was the approach that I had with that. You have to make it happen. You have to create it. You got to create it. You got to create it. Right. And that was the belief system that I had at the time, was that if you wanted a miracle to happen, if you want to heal, you had to create you had to create it. You had to like create it and attract it to you and manifest it. And I thought these were things that were making it like create. But what I didn't understand is that the real key to healing isn't what you're doing externally. It's not like the vision board. Also, I did a vision board about what my well self looked like. But it wasn't the external activities that were the cause of my healing. It wasn't the fact that I changed my diet that actually was the cause of my healing. It wasn't the fact that, I had kept, and there was a lot of other things that happened. I'm just kind of giving you the basic, because there was like, I kept a positive bubble, right? So if you came between, this was a rule of thumb, like if you came within 5 feet of me, you could only speak positively to me. And this was even for my doctors. So if you couldn't give me any bad news, you couldn't talk about anything. You couldn't talk about the news. You couldn't talk about what your fears were, your worries were around me. You had to, if you came within 5 feet of me, you had to speak something positive, and you had to speak something uplifting. And so even with my doctors, when they were like, you're not getting better, or, nothing's, if they thought, you weren't getting better, or you weren't, this is not, you're not healing, or you're not going to be able to heal. They had to say that like 5 feet away, at least 5 feet away from me, like literally. This is literally a rule. They had to say that 5 feet away from me, or they had to go through a buffer, which was they told my mother. Like, you couldn't talk to me about it. You had to tell sometimes you couldn't talk to me about it. You had to tell my mom. And then my mother filtered it into a way, when she came in and told me about it, she told me in a way that made me feel empowered. So, I want to share with you what the key was. So I thought, and this is usually when people first hear about and first learn about themselves being a spiritual being, having human experience, what they believe is that, what they associate that with, what they believe that means, and this is what I believed in the beginning. What they believe that means is, they believe it means that, you can create whatever you want, and that you have to make it happen, right? So there's a level of force, there's a level of struggle, there's a level of like effort. There's a lot of efforting, external efforting, like you move things out in reality to kind of make this happen. But that's what I also believe. That was the approach that I took the first time. And it was also the approach that I took the second time in the beginning, which is why it didn't work. Because there was a deeper level of understanding that my soul was asking of me, and there was a deeper level of understanding that healing actually takes. And so why it actually worked the first time was, the principle for healing is not like to make the vision board, to do the visualization, all of that. Those are tools that can help assist the principle, but those aren't the principle itself. The principle of healing is, you have to experience the opposite state of being. And I'm going to say this several different ways and several different times during this video, because I really want to make sure you get very clear about it. The principle of healing is that you must experience the opposite state of being. Healing is literally a game of opposites. So I'm going to go back to the things that I shared with you that I did, and I want to share with you how they shifted my inner state of being, but I wasn't aware of what that was. I wasn't aware of that's why they worked at the time. So remember I talked to you about so let me start with my parents coming. So when I first got ill, I had just moved to Washington, D.C. from Atlanta. I had just graduated from college, and I was probably a year out. So it was like within a year out of my graduation, that I got sick. Now, what was going on when I moved to Washington, D.C. was I moved by myself. So I didn't have any friends initially out there. I didn't have any family out there. So I was alone. And I was excited about that, right? Initially, I was excited about this process, but it took me a long time to make friends, because I moved initially and I started working right away. And so one of the things that started to happen was I started to feel lonely. I started to feel alone. And that wasn't something that was in my makeup before. That wasn't something that was in my journey before. I didn't grow up feeling alone. I was one of the people that always had a large group of friends, even when I was a kid. And I had a large group of cousins. Like, I have, people think I'm kidding about this, but I literally have 100 first cousins. And so there was no, like, I had a sense, even though I'm an only child, I had a sense of community and belonging and, a sense of togetherness, all of my life. Like, I had my cousins when I went away, and then I had my friends. I had a large group of friends, growing up and in high school, because I was an athlete as well. So I was always in a community always. When I went to college, I was in the Morehouse College Glee Club. So I traveled with them, and I was with them all the time, and we had a very strong kind of knit relationship with a lot of the people in that. So I was used to having a strong sense of community. And when I moved away, I didn't have it. And it was like my first time really feeling lonely and feeling alone. And, I wasn't dating a lot then, because at that time I was trying to keep my sexuality intact, because my job, I didn't want my job to find out at first. So I wasn't dating anyone. And I wasn't, I didn't have a really solid group of friends like I usually would do. And so, I was feeling alone. And so when my parents came up, so the state of being that I was habitually having, one of the states of being that I was habitually having was this feeling of alone. And that particular thing, and when I say that you have to experience the opposite state of being, you have to experience the opposite state of being that you're feeling that caused the illness. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I shared the message that our energy, our internal states of being that everything is the reflection, everything in our reality, everything we experience in our reality is a reflection somehow of the internal state of being we hold. That's also sometimes called your vibration. So your relationships, the experiences that show up, the people you draw into your life and how they behave once they get there, the events and things that happen, your relationship with money, like all of those things are a reflection somehow of the internal states of being that you're holding chronically, that you're habitually holding, like that are patterns, right, that you're holding over longer periods of time. So loneliness had become my new pattern. And the thing about it is you've got to hold an internal state of being that is more in alignment with how your soul feels, right? So there's two parts of you. There's this temporal part, there's this human part of you, which we call the physical part of you. And then that's the part that you see with your eyes. That's the part that, has this body, all of that. But there's another part of you that you can't see with your eyes. You can only feel. And it's the bigger part of you. It's the older part of you. It's the eternal part of you. It's the truth of your divine nature. And I call that the soul. Some people call that the higher self. Some people call it your God self. Some people call it your inner being. It doesn't matter what you call it. It matters that you're in alignment with it. And what I mean by alignment with it is that you hold an internal state, right? Which is basically how you feel. You hold an internal state that is, and feel emotionally, by the way, not necessarily like how you feel physically, but how you feel emotionally. So that you hold an internal state that is in alignment with how the soul feels. And the soul feels really pretty much like the basic cornerstones for how the soul feels. Your soul feels worthy. It feels free. It feels free and liberated. It feels joyous. It feels loved and lovable, which is actually kind of worthy, and loved and lovable kind of go in the same thing. And it feels at ease. It feels relaxed and at ease. So when we're holding internal states that are not in alignment with that some kind of way, we actually disconnect from the soul. We disconnect. And that's where all the dysfunction comes from. That's where all the disease and illness starts to manifest, is the disconnection from ourselves. And the longer we stay disconnected, the more dysfunction starts to show up and the more our body can't stay well, because that connection, that alignment, that synergy, and that's what coming back home to myself was, coming back home to that alignment. That alignment is literally the source of well-being in our lives and wellness in our bodies. So when we talk about the opposite, what we're saying is you've got to, somehow I was living in a state of being where I was disconnected from myself. And I had to come to state of beings that were states that reconnected me to my soul. So the loneliness piece was disconnection, because my soul doesn't feel lonely. It's one with everything. The soul is literally part of everything. So the soul it feels like it belongs. It feels like connection. And so when my parents came up, one of the things that happened was I started to feel a sense of community. I didn't feel alone anymore. I didn't feel alone. And so that shifted that state of being. And they were there for about 3 months. So for 3 months, I had this feeling of community and connection, and, they were cooking for me, and they were, and I also, because they were there, I also felt loved. And I wasn't feeling loved. If you know my story, I had a lot of shame and all of that. Well, that kind of got interrupted when my parents came, because, again, the things we were doing every night, when they were saying, they were telling me different things about, what they appreciated about me. And also because they were believing that they were going to lose their child, right? Because what all the doctors were saying was, I'm probably not going to make it, right? Even after I made it after the 7-day mark, what they initially diagnosed me with, they were just like, we're just holding this day to day. We don't think he's probably going to make it, but he may not make it long. So they were really, when you believe you're getting ready to lose somebody, your heart kind of breaks open. So there's even more love that shares. So I felt really deeply loved, which was a change from what I was feeling, right? I wasn't feeling loved when I was there. I wasn't, and predominantly in my life, right? But especially at that time of my life, I wasn't feeling loved. I was feeling alone. I was feeling a little ashamed of my body because I had gained some weight. So I was feeling unlovable, by the way. And those are direct energies that disconnect you from yourself. They disconnect from the soul. But when my parents came up, I began to start to feel the opposite. I began to feel the opposite of unlovable and alone. I began to feel like a sense of togetherness and community, and I began to feel loved. I began to feel appreciated, right? And so that energy reconnected, and that was a source of me healing. The other part, when I talked about the visualization with the kidney model, right? What that did was that made me start to feel well, right? So this is a universal law. Like, you can't be well if you feel sick. Now, we're not talking about physically, because my body was in pain during this time. There were pains that I had in my body still. It wasn't about the physical sensations. It was about the emotional, the energetic sensation. So if you feel sick, you can't manifest wellness. Just like if you feel poor, you can't manifest wealth. If you feel alone, you can't manifest a loving relationship. If you feel like this is your internal state is what creates your external reality. So you can't live an external reality that's not a match to how you're internally feeling. So what the visualization process did, it wasn't that I was creating these healthy kidneys, which is what I was telling myself. Like, that was what I believed in my head. What the visualization process does, and this is when I talk to people about visualization today, the power of visualization isn't that you're creating something in your head, it's that it's changing how you're feeling emotionally. Because when I began to imagine myself that those were my kidneys, I began to feel well. I began to feel healthy. I began to feel like, and that changed my internal state. So I began to change from an internal state of sickness, of feeling sick, into feeling healthy. Right? So that was the key to that I didn't understand at the time. I thought at the time it was about the practice and it was about like creating something in my mind. It wasn't about that. The key to healing and the key to the manifestation and healing, the process is the same. The key to manifesting something different is to experience a different state of being. Right? And so you'll hear a lot of spiritual teachers saying, feel the way that it would feel as if that was manifested already. Why that's important is because that's a different state of being. It's a different internal state of being than what you feel now. Right now, you may feel the lack of that, which at that time was sickness. In order to experience wellness, I had to start to feel well, and I had to feel it chronically. So I was doing this visualization every day, every morning, and that literally shifted my internal state of being. So that was like one of the major things that was important for that. The other part of that, which I told you about being vegan, and I don't speak a lot about diet because of this very thing, because we're taught a lot, and there's a lot of belief system that your food is what creates wellness in the body, and that is absolutely not true. If it has truth, it's probably like maybe 2% of that. 2% of what you're eating actually affects the body like that. And I know this is going to shock a lot of you out there because this is very different from how we're taught. What is most important about the food that you're eating is that you believe that what you're eating is healthy for you. That what you believe that you're eating is healthy for you, and that it is empowering you, and that you believe that what you're doing is helping you heal. Because you can eat because there's countless examples out there of people who they drank all the green juice. They were raw vegan. They weren't just vegan, they were raw vegan. They never ate any animal products. They never ate any sugar, and they still got cancer, or they still got this, or they still got that, and they passed from it, right? Because it didn't have anything to do with the food. It has to do with your internal state. Right? And so what the food did for me, though, was for many years. So this was the thing that it took me years to understand. For many years before I became vegan, I believed, because I had started to read books, I started to talk to different people, I had started to do internships when I was in college. I did an internship with an herbalist. And I ate meat at that time, and I was well. I was fine. I was really healthy. I had a lot of energy at that time. But I started to believe that I needed to change. I needed to stop eating meat in order to really be healthy. That was the belief I started to have. And so every time I started to eat meat, when I started to eat meat after that, I started to feel bad about myself, like I was doing something wrong. And here's the thing, beloveds, you cannot do something you think is wrong or bad for you and have it not poison your internal state. Because what your internal state starts to feel is like you're betraying yourself and you're doing something wrong. And that poisons your system. That poisons the body. And so why becoming vegan at that time began to help me was because I started to feel like I wasn't betraying myself anymore. And I started to feel like I was doing something right. And so I no longer held inside of me this feeling like I was doing something wrong. Right? That was the thing that healed my body, because that freed the energy up. Because when you feel like you're doing something wrong and you have this sense of betrayal, then life force energy, the very energy, again, your soul's energy, which is life force energy, the energy that is the very source of wellness in the body. When you're doing things that you believe are wrong for you, and you are doing things that you feel a sense of that you're betraying yourself, that's where your body starts to blockages start to happen in the body, and the well-being energy, the wellness energy can't flow through the body, and that's where the body starts to become imbalanced. That's one of the main things I work with people today who are wanting to heal themselves, is that we look at where you're betraying yourself and where you're doing things that you believe are wrong. What are you doing things in your life that you believe that you have a feeling about what's wrong with you? Like, there are many people who eat chocolate cake all day and have no health issues, and they don't even gain any weight from it, right? There are people who eat, quote unquote, what we have began to term as junk food, right? There are many people across the world that eat in ways that we may personally believe, is unhealthy, that are completely healthy, right? And it's because they don't have the belief system in their head that what they're eating is wrong. They have a belief that what they believe that what they're doing is healthy, right? So maybe their parents told them, if you eat this cow's bone, this will make you really healthy and strong. And so they eat it, and they have an experience of being healthy and strong, where you believe, and where I had started to believe, if I eat that cow's bone, that's bad. Meat is bad for my body. So if I eat it, it's going to poison my system. Again, you cannot have a belief about something. This is about the power of your beliefs. You can't have a belief about something and not have it made true in your life. If you have a belief about something, not just a thought about something, a belief is a thought that you continually think, so it's become a pattern, and it's become something that you say is true. The beliefs are something we say is true. So here's the thing, here's a deeper understanding about the law of attraction that a lot of people aren't teaching, is that the law of attraction isn't just about what you're thinking. What it really is about is it's making sure that all of the things that you hold as truth become a lived experience for you. They must become a lived experience for you. So if you believe eating, meat is bad for you, and you eat meat, then it has to be bad for you in some way. It has to prove so that your belief is affirmed. Your belief has to be confirmed and affirmed. So if you believe eating meat is bad for you, then until you change that belief, you don't need to eat meat. So I had started to believe that eating meat was bad for me, but then I was still eating meat. So when I changed, when I got diagnosed and I became a vegan, I started to feel better internally about myself. I started to feel like I wasn't betraying myself anymore. I started to feel like I was in alignment with my belief system, and the energy started to flow, and that assisted in healing my body. The other portion of this is, I talked about how I stepped back from work. And so what I didn't understand at that time was, the how stress affects the body. So my work, and what I mean by stress is that when we do things that we don't enjoy, and when we start to feel the drain of that, because that's really what a stress is. It's a drain of life force energy from the body. So my work felt draining to me because initially it felt very charging and very empowering. I was working at the time as a counselor and a case manager for people with for men with HIV and AIDS, and if that isn't a divine synchronistic thing all by itself. The universe is such a beautiful thing because it always leads you to. It's always, everything around you is a message and is serving you. Like the universe is always talking to you. So my first job out of college was as a counselor and a case manager for people with HIV and AIDS, and I was not diagnosed. I hadn't been diagnosed with that yet. I was healthy. I wasn't, like, this diagnosis didn't come until after that. And so I did that work because I had a really good passion. Like after I graduated from college, I had this deep passion for helping people heal. I really wanted to help people heal, and I wanted to help people heal by understanding, like, the connection to their spirit. That was really what I wanted. So what I was doing initially, when I worked at this job, was I was teaching meditation. I was going around the city to different hospitals, to different organizations, different health clinics, and I was teaching meditation to different people. I was teaching people how to meditate and how to use meditation to really enhance their health and really help them connect in with their soul, and I loved that. But a few months before I became sick, my supervisor made me stop that. He was like, "I don't want you to do that anymore." And I don't know why, initially why he did that, but it made me really sad. It made me not enjoy my work anymore because I was really passionate about that, and I really enjoyed that. And so my job became something that I didn't enjoy anymore. It became something that wasn't charging me with joy. It was making me drained. Also, that wasn't really what I wanted to do at the time. At the time, although I did have this passion for helping people heal, my real passion and what I really wanted to do and why I really moved to DC was I wanted to sing. I wanted to become a singer, right? I wanted to travel the world singing. I wanted to perform, and I wasn't doing any of that at the time. My life kind of became really saturated and focused with that job, and I wasn't performing anywhere outside of the city. I wasn't performing anywhere outside of work. I wasn't doing anything, and so I became really unhappy. Remember, I said before that one of the main feelings that one of the main energies and the main ways your soul feels happy. And I became really unhappy. I was actually really sad. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I was sad. I was very unhappy. And so when I left my work, when I kind of took a sabbatical from my work, and I was with my parents and all of that, the joy kind of started to come back, and I wasn't stressed. I didn't have any stress anymore in my body. And I began to do things that made me happy. This is another one of the things that happened that I didn't really understand the power that this had until I was in the second phase of my healing journey after the second time. And that was, I began to start cooking. So one of the things that I did, I was in the hospital for a month. That first time I was in the hospital for, I think between 30 and 40 days. And one of the things I would do on my hospital bed, because I couldn't move around a lot because I was still in a lot of pain. And so I was watching TV, and this is one thing I started to watch, and I had not watched this before. So this was one of the few channels that the hospital had, and it was the Food Network channel. And I love to eat. Now, I have always loved to eat, so that was not new. But what started to happen, I began to watch the Food Network channel, and I began to watch people cooking, and I began to get so excited about the idea of cooking. And so when I came out of the hospital and was back home, I started cooking, and I discovered my deep, deep love, my deep passion for cooking. And even though, here I was on dialysis and here I was sick and all that, my parents, I would give them a grocery list. I would send them to a grocery store. They would come back and I would cook, right? So in the beginning, they cooked for me. But when I got out, after a while, I started to cook because it just charged me. It was something that I fully enjoyed. It was something that drew breath through me. It drew life force energy through me. And that was the thing. So here I was now, instead of being unhappy, I started to shift over into being really happy. I was happy that my family was there, and I was happy the act of cooking every day for myself made me ridiculously happy. And I wasn't doing that. I didn't cook a lot before that. I went out to eat a lot. But what I discovered was cooking was something that really charged me. And so I had this life force that was charging through me. I had changed my internal state from one of feeling alone to feeling together. The affirmations made me feel, happy. They made me feel, and just all the things that I was doing was changing my internal state from one of stress, from one of unhappiness, from one of feeling alone, from one of feeling ashamed, because that was one of the things that the affirmations did. I started to do affirmations around feeling shame, to feeling like, and then also the visualization, to feeling from feeling sick to feeling well. And so my state of being, my internal state of being had shifted, and it was how I was feeling every day. So it wasn't just what I felt occasionally, like every once in a while. It's how I felt every day. And the more and more I started to feel happy, the more I started to feel this sense of belonging and this sense of togetherness, the more I started to feel relaxed, right? Remember I said at ease, so I wasn't stressed out by work. The healthier my body started to become. And that shift in the internal state of being was literally the key to my healing. It was the key to my body fully healing. It had nothing to do with, and also why I know it had nothing to do with the diet, because this was another thing that happened in my healing journey. Probably within, I think, the first 2 months, they would run tests. So they would run every 2 weeks they would run a test to see kind of what was going on and how my kidneys were doing. And one of the things they test when you have kidney failure is the protein levels in your body. Because your protein is something that helps you heal. The protein that you have in your body, that your body processes, is what helps the muscles heal and the tissues heal. And I was leaking protein out through my urine, and so that was a problem. And my protein, the levels of protein that I had were dramatically low. They were like drastically, deathly low. And so I was trying everything. I was eating vegan burgers. I was trying vegetable proteins, and it wasn't working. It wasn't coming up. It wasn't changing. And so, and then I was also drastically anemic. And that wasn't changing either at the time. And so no matter what I was doing, and no matter how many greens I was eating or drinking or all of that, it was not working. And so what I had to do, when my doctor sat me down and they were like, we really think you need to eat meat. You need to eat meat because your protein is not getting better and you're not going to make it if this protein continues to drop down. And I'm not talking about it just drops down to a different level of just like, people who are vegan, they usually will have a lower level of protein intake. No matter what kind of protein you ingest, no matter how much you do, you can have a healthy level, but it's going to be less than people who eat meat, right? And so it wasn't like that. I'm talking about to the point where my cells and my tissues were disintegrating because of it. So, and again, I was doing everything, like all the vegan treats to get in protein, and it was not working. And so the doctors were like, you need to eat meat. And I had such a resistance to that at first. I was like, no, that's not what I need, again, because I had the belief that I'm only going to be well if I'm a vegan. And so I had this conundrum, and I had to like sit with myself. And I had to change my belief, because I said, look, you're not here's what your life is reflecting to you. You have to stop fighting the life evidence that's reflecting to you. You're not getting better this way. This is not going to make you better. You're going to have to eat meat. And so I gave myself permission to eat meat, and I gave myself permission to believe that eating meat was not going to be detrimental to me, that it was going to help me. I literally started to change my beliefs around that. And so I started to eat chicken. And literally, within a week's time, my protein started to skyrocket and the anemia began to get better. And it was within probably 3 weeks after I started eating meat again that I saw that my body started to really ridiculously start to get better. And I started to fully, that's when my full healing showed up within weeks kind of after that. So it wasn't this, again, it wasn't it wasn't what, a lot of people will say that you have to be vegan in order to heal. Like, that's not what I had to do. That was not what my body was saying. But again, it was the internal state. I had to believe that what I was doing was helping me. So I had to shift, because what I know that I know that I know, and I've had many experiences since that, is that that have proven this, that if I ate the meat the second time and I continued to believe that it was wrong and that it wasn't, and that it was unhealthy for me to do, I would have crashed out. Like, I would have really got sick, and I would have probably died. Because again, when you do things that you believe are not right for you, this is for anybody that's wanting to heal. What's most important is not what everybody thinks you should be doing. What's most important is that you believe that what you're doing is the right thing for you and that it is helping you heal. Because if you don't believe that, if you do not believe in what you're doing, and if you believe that what you're doing in some way is wrong and that it is detrimental to you, it has to be. It has to be. That's the whole, and even science has found this out. This is the whole thing behind the placebo effect. Is like, one of my favorite things that I learned in psychology was this example of the placebo effect, where they took people who needed knee surgery. So they needed it. So something happened with their knees, and they actually needed knee surgery. And what they did was they went. So they had a control group, and the control group was the people who actually had the knee surgery. So they actually performed the knee surgery that they needed, the traditional knee surgery that they would do to fix that knee. They performed that surgery on this group of people. Then there was the study group, and the study group was the people where they needed the same knee surgery. They had the same knee problems, right? They had the same whatever it was, and they needed the surgery. And what they did, instead of perform the surgery on the people, what they did is they went through the process like they were gonna do the surgery. So they did the regular surgical process where, you got your IV in, and then they gave them anesthesia, so where they were put under, right? And so when they went under, instead of performing the knee surgery on them, they did like slight cuts on the knee where they would cut them, like where they would usually cut their knee if they were going to do the surgery. And they did slight cuts where they were going to put the knee, and then they sewed it back up. So that what would happen when the person woke up was they wouldn't actually have had the knee surgery, but they would look at their knee and they would think that the surgery had already happened, that they got it. What they found, right? So what happened was there was a group that had the surgery and a group that didn't have the surgery, but thought they did, were made to believe that they did. And so what happened was both groups, their knees healed and got better and were fully functional. Both groups. The group that got the surgery, which actually fixed the knee, and then the group that didn't get the surgery, their knees healed themselves. Their knees healed themselves without the surgery, and they were fully better. Why? Because they believed that their knee was fixed. And so it became fixed. Right? So this, again, is the power of belief. It's the power of our beliefs. Your beliefs are literally creating your life because they make you feel, because your beliefs are determine how you feel. So if you feel like your knee is well and it's fixed and it's working, then it has to. Like, if you internally believe that and you feel that way, then again, remember, your internal state is the only thing determining your external reality. It's the only thing. So they were feeling like their knee was fixed. They were believing it, and they were going out in the world as if it was, and it was. And so this is a study. You can find this study. This is not something I'm making up. This is a study that was actually done. You can research this study and read it for yourself. And there are countless studies that have been done like this. There are countless examples of the placebo effect. So again, why I say that is it was important for me to believe that what I was doing was helping me heal. So what I believed was that I could eat chicken. Like, I didn't eat red meat or pork because I still couldn't get my mind to believe that I could eat those things and stay well. But I could believe that if I ate clean chicken, that I would be well. And immediately after I started doing that, I started to get better. So I just wanted to come and share this with you, that what I thought was the thing at the time when I was doing all of this, what I thought was that it was the external stuff that I was doing that was the cause of my well-being, and not the internal shift, right? And that's why it took me so long to heal the second time, because why it took me so long to heal the second time is because I was so busy trying to do the external stuff and not focusing on shifting my internal stuff. So my internal stuff wasn't shifting the second time, but I was still doing all this external stuff. And that's why my journey the second time was really about understanding about shifting my internal state, which is coming back home to yourself, like coming back, making sure my internal state is in alignment with how my soul actually feels. So changing my beliefs so that I could believe things that make me feel that make me think and feel how my soul thinks and feels. The behaviors that I took really were behaviors that helped me shift my internal state. And it took me so long because for years I was just trying to meditate my way out. I was trying to diet my way out. I was trying to do all the manifestation tricks and tools my way out, and they weren't working because what wasn't shifting the second time was my internal state, because I had dived deeper into my old patterns, and I had more fears, and I wasn't working on my loneliness, and I wasn't working on, because when my parents left, so why I got sick again the second time is like my parents went home. I went back to eating, after I healed, shortly after that, I went back to eating things that I thought was wrong for me. And I didn't continue that way of eating. And again, it wasn't the eating itself. It was because I started to eat in a way that I believed wasn't healthy, right? I went back into my old patterns of feeling ashamed of my body and things like that. So I went back. The shift in my internal state was temporary, and it was based on what I was doing externally. It wasn't based on what I had really learned how to do internally. And that was the difference in the first time and the second time. The first time was so focused on the external. The second time I had to learn how instead of to have a temporary shift in my internal state, how to really have that be my default setting. Like how to have my default internal state being the state of my soul, like how my soul feels. And that required me really healing my trauma, changing my belief systems, being in service to my joy and following my joy and living a life of passion, and really learning how to love myself, right? That was because those things changed my internal state for the better. They changed the pattern of my internal state. So that was I wanted to share that with you, that why I healed the first time was that I had shifted my internal state, and I had this I had done it long enough to where it allowed life force energy to flow through me. I was in connection with my soul and synergy, and that energy began to heal my body, and I was able to do that long enough to where it healed my body. Why I got sick again was I went back. Right? And that's the key about healing. When you heal, you have to stay that person. You have to stay in that new state of being, because that's the state of being of wellness for you. So the state of being of where I felt connected, the state of being where I felt loved and appreciated, the state of being where I felt relaxed and at ease, the state of being where I felt well, right? That was the state of well-being and wellness for me. But as soon as that was over and I got my clean bill of health and my parents went home, I went right back to feeling alone. I went right back to feeling unloved and lonely. I went right back to feeling like I was doing something wrong and betraying myself, right? I went right back to hiding and all of that stuff. And so again, that was the state of being that created illness for me. And so of course, the illness came right back, because that was the state of being that manifested those illnesses. So my journey really was my journey, which took me years to understand the second time, which I now fully understand and am full service to, is that you have to hold the inner state of being that is in alignment with who you really are. So, so I just wanted to share that with you all tonight. That was an awareness that I got, that I see a lot of people who are healing don't understand it. They don't understand it, and it's not their fault because it's not being taught. even for people who teach healing and wellness, we don't get this. A lot of them don't get this piece, and that's why a lot of people healing is so temporary. Like why people who will heal from cancer, within a few years later they'll get the cancer will return, or while they'll heal from something and a few years later, whatever that thing that they heal from, it comes back, and it's because it wasn't about the external things that you were doing, right? Those things helped. But they weren't the root cause of the healing. The root cause of the healing is you shifted your internal state somehow. And if you will learn how to shift your internal state and live in that new internal state consistently, like that's your new pattern of living, then you will now be well, and it will and you don't go back. You don't go back to who you used to be. You don't go back to the way of being that you used to have. So that's the real key to healing, is to shift. Like the disease or the illness is an indicator that you must now shift your way of being. You must shift your internal state of being and shift it and stay there, right? Develop a consciousness and a vibration and a lifestyle that allows you to stay there. Shift your consciousness and your lifestyle so that you can stay in that vibration of well-being, the vibration of joy, the vibration of ease, of feeling worthy and loved and lovable, and the vibration of freedom, right? Feeling free. And freedom was another piece of my work, because I didn't feel free there. So when I got out of that, I started to return to my feeling free. But yeah, so that's the key, loves. Healing is about experiencing the opposite state of being, consistently enough. So habitually enough. And you can get it. There are many different modalities that can help you shift your state of being. So there's not like one way to shift. There are many ways to do that. But the real root cause of healing and wellness and well-being is to live an opposite state of being. So if you feel like you don't matter, you got to feel like you matter. If you feel like you're not loved, you got to feel like you're loved. If you feel alone, you need to feel like a sense of togetherness and belonging and community. If you feel ashamed of yourself, you've got to feel appreciation and pride and celebration for yourself. If you feel stressed, you've got to feel at ease, right? If you feel in bondage or imprisoned somehow by your life, you got to feel liberated. Right? So a key to healing is to really get clear on how you're feeling right now. Like, how are you emotionally feeling for real? Like, are you feeling a sense of bondage? Are you feeling a sense of loneliness? Are you feeling, if you're afraid, this is a big one too. If you've been worried a lot or afraid, you've got to feel a sense of security. You've got to feel a sense of safety. You've got to feel a sense of being at ease and trust and surrender. Like, those things will lead you into healing. So it's about experiencing the opposite state of being. That's the root cause of healing. Everything else is really the dog and pony show that helps that's in service to that. So as always, you guys, thank you for tuning in with me. I see a lot of your comments. I've been on for a while, so I won't hold you all anymore. I'll respond to your comments personally in writing later. So as always, you all, I love you. I wish you nothing but happiness, well-being, and reconnection to your soul, because you deserve it, and it's why you're here. Much love. Bye.